In Ellen G. White's teachings, the concept of divine guidance is not a passive experience. It begins with an intentional decision, the act of opening one's heart to God. She describes the human heart as a garden, where God's guidance can only flourish if the soil is prepared. A closed heart, however, like hard, rocky soil, cannot receive the seeds of divine wisdom. In order to receive this guidance, we must first let go of pride, self-reliance, and the misconception that we can control everything. By submitting ourselves to God's will, we actively create space for His divine wisdom to take root and grow. Ellen G. White frequently emphasizes the importance of surrendering to God's will daily. In one of her notable writings, she encourages believers to commit every part of their lives to God, trusting that His guidance is always perfect. This surrender is not just about asking for direction, but also about being willing to follow it, even when it leads us in a direction different from what we might expect or desire. To open one's heart to God's leading is to step aside and let Him take the reins. It's about having the humility to admit that we do not know all the answers, that our human understanding is limited, but that God's wisdom is boundless. One practical way to open your heart to God's guidance is through prayer. Prayer is not simply a list of requests, but a time of deep communion with God, where we allow ourselves to listen to Him. Ellen G. White suggests that quiet, reflective prayer can lead us to moments of profound clarity. During these times, we should ask God to help us discern His voice amid the noise and distractions of life. It is essential to remember that divine guidance may not come in the form of a loud, clear voice. Often, it is a gentle prompting, a subtle nudge that guides our hearts in the right direction. By being open and sensitive to these whispers, we are more likely to be attuned to the divine wisdom that is constantly available to us. Another key aspect of this openness is trust. Opening your heart to God's leading requires a level of trust that God knows what is best for you. It is a shift from trusting in your own judgment to trusting in His infinite wisdom. White describes this trust as foundational for a deeper relationship with God. As we begin to trust Him more, our hearts are more open to His guidance. This trust allows us to follow His leading even when the path is uncertain. When we open our hearts, we invite God into every area of our lives, asking Him to guide us in all our decisions, big and small. In conclusion, the first simple change that reopens your mind to divine guidance is to open your heart to God's leading. This step involves surrender, trust, and a willingness to listen for His voice. The more we open ourselves to God, the more we will recognize His guidance in our lives. This is the first step in allowing divine wisdom to shape our decisions and actions. The second change that Ellen G. White highlights in her teachings is the importance of trusting God's timing in all things. Divine guidance, according to White, is not just about receiving direction, but also about waiting for the right time. In a world where instant gratification is often the norm, this idea can be difficult to grasp. However, patience is a vital part of the Christian walk. White often writes about how God's timing is perfect, even when it feels like we are waiting too long or when things seem to be moving at a pace we do not understand. Trusting God's timing requires us to relinquish control. It calls for patience and the ability to wait on God, knowing that His plans for us are always better than anything we could arrange on our own. Ellen G. White frequently shares examples from Scripture to illustrate this principle. For instance, she points to the life of Abraham, who had to wait many years for the fulfillment of God's promise. Abraham's story is a testament to the importance of waiting patiently for God's perfect timing. Though the promise seemed delayed, God's timing was flawless, and the result was far better than anything Abraham could have imagined. Trusting in God's timing also means understanding that His delays are not denials. Sometimes we may feel that God is silent, or that he has abandoned us because his answers are delayed. But in reality, these waiting periods are often times of preparation. Ellen G. White explains that God uses these waiting times to refine our character, strengthen our faith, and prepare us for the blessings he is about to pour out. Waiting on God is not a passive act, but an active process of learning to trust and grow spiritually. It is important to note that trusting God's timing does not mean being idle. While we wait for his direction, we must remain faithful in doing what we know is right. We continue to seek God, serve others, and live in accordance with his principles. Our waiting should be marked by faithfulness and obedience. Ellen G. White teaches that even in times of waiting, we can experience peace and contentment if we trust that God is working behind the scenes. It is not always easy, but it is through these moments that we learn the value of God's perfect timing. In our modern, fast-paced world, it is easy to forget that God operates outside of our human constraints of time. His perspective is eternal, and he sees the end from the beginning. Trusting in his timing allows us to rest in the certainty that everything will unfold as it should. When we trust God's timing, we free ourselves from the anxiety and pressure to have everything happen according to our own schedule. This trust deepens our relationship with him and opens our minds to the divine guidance he is offering. The third simple change that Ellen G. White advocates for in reopening our minds to divine guidance is cultivating an attitude of gratitude. In her writings, White consistently emphasizes the power of gratitude to transform the believer's life. Gratitude, she teaches, is not merely an expression of thanks for the good things that happen, but a mindset that permeates every area of life. A heart full of gratitude is one that is more likely to recognize God's presence and his guidance. Ellen G. White often writes about how gratitude can change our entire perspective on life. She points out that a grateful heart is one that sees the goodness of God even in difficult circumstances. Gratitude shifts our focus away from our struggles and disappointments and toward the blessings and opportunities we have. This shift in focus helps us to remain open to God's leading because we are no longer consumed by negativity or doubt. When we cultivate an attitude of gratitude, we are more likely to see how God is at work in our lives, even in ways that may not be immediately obvious. Furthermore, gratitude fosters humility. White teaches that when we recognize the countless blessings we have received, we are reminded of our dependence on God. Gratitude allows us to acknowledge that every good thing in our lives comes from his hand. This recognition of God's goodness opens our hearts to receive his guidance more readily. It helps us to trust him more fully and to seek his wisdom in all things. Practically, cultivating gratitude can be done through regular reflection on the things for which we are thankful. White encourages believers to take time each day to list their blessings and express thanks to God. This simple practice can be transformative. It helps to create a mindset that is continually looking for the good in life, even when circumstances are challenging. Gratitude also leads to contentment, which in turn allows us to better hear God's voice and receive his guidance without the distractions of anxiety or impatience. In addition to transforming our perspective, gratitude also has a profound impact on our relationships with others. When we are grateful, we are more likely to extend kindness, generosity, and love. These actions reflect the character of God, and when we reflect his character, we become more attuned to his guidance. Gratitude helps to align our hearts with God's purposes and draws us closer to him. In conclusion, the three simple changes that can help reopen your mind to divine guidance are opening your heart to God's will, trusting in his perfect timing, and cultivating an attitude of gratitude. These steps are interconnected and serve as a foundation for living a life that is continually guided by God's wisdom and love. Ellen G. White's teachings remind us that receiving divine guidance is not a one-time event, but a continuous process. As we open our hearts to God, trust in His timing, and cultivate gratitude, we make ourselves more receptive to His voice and direction. These changes require intentional effort, but the rewards are immense. Divine guidance brings peace, clarity, and purpose to our lives, helping us navigate the complexities of life with confidence and trust in God's sovereignty. By embracing these simple changes, we align our lives with God's will and open ourselves to the abundant blessings He has in store for us. As we journey through life, we can be assured that, with each step of trust, patience, and gratitude, we will hear God's guidance more clearly, leading us to a deeper relationship with Him and to a life of fulfillment and purpose.